It's a new year. 2023 is here. Putting on my list of minis. New season, let's cheers. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the past. Time to get on the Not Your Average Joel podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not Your Average Joel. So far, season 3 has been going great. I've been able to reconnect with people that I haven't seen in a while, and I've had new guests on here and also past guests. Which, speaking of a past guest, we do have a past guest back here. This is Sam. She was actually on here in season 2 when we talked about vacations, which was a very fun topic, talking about where all we've been to and what all we've done. And actually, that's kind of how we met as I went out to Greece on a group trip, and I met Sam there. We connected, and we've been keeping in touch ever since. So it's definitely good having her back. So welcome back, and thank you for being here.
No problem, Joe. Hey everyone. I am been out in the yard. Had to find a quiet spot because all my family people want to come by and say hey and carry on, and I'm just trying to do something. I love them, but I'm trying to do something. But it's not us excited to be back. Thank you so much for having me again, Joel. I love to see it. If anytime you got questions, anything, just ask. You know how that goes.
Yes, most definitely. I definitely appreciate your support, and I love having you here because it's definitely think this is going to be a very good conversation that we're going to have. I know our last topic, excuse me, our last topic that we had was a pretty lighthearted and fun one. This one may be a little bit more on the serious side, but it's a good, necessary topic that I think we should talk about for sure.
Correct. Correct.
So, for everyone that doesn't know, today's topic is actually going to be on spiritual health. So, being down here in the Bible Belt, I know Sam can relate to this. We it almost feels like we have like certain things that we do in the Bible Belt, and sometimes our spiritual health, I feel like can hinder in a way when like we try to pursue just playing the game of religion. So I kind of want to talk, a little bit about that. And also, I do have a few questions that I want to ask Sam, and of course, I will put my input as well. And we will try to give some clarification as to like what exactly is spiritual health and stuff like that. So I guess that will actually be my first question to Sam. So what do you think it means to be spiritually healthy?
Um, I feel like life is a journey as in itself. And like you said, being in a Bible Belt, I grew up Southern Baptist. I'm pretty sure you might have been in the presence of, or the same thing, um, in the church, from early age on till I got to about a teenager, and then you get wayward. And I feel like I'm aligning myself back with it. So I feel like being in good spiritual health means you're living, you're waking up each day with a pure heart. To me, you ain't letting your burdens weigh you down. You know what, to limit your boundaries. You're giving it to whomever. See that, and that's part of spiritual health too. I feel like is recognizing other people's spiritual journeys and not casting judgment upon it, but looking at it as that's their journey. I have my journey, and just that type of stuff. Just positivity. To me, good spiritual health to me is having positive. That don't mean things aren't going to happen and stuff not, but I mean life happens, and how you respond to it. I feel like it's being in good. To say your spiritual health says a lot about it. If even that's what you believe, So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make a very good point that like, not everybody has the same spiritual journey. Some people go through different religions, and you always hope that somebody may go like the way that you believe, but then that's not always the case, because of maybe whether, wherever they're living in, that can affect, like religion, like in Asia, I know I'm sure there's, a lot of people there that are primarily like either like Buddhist or Hindu or
right.
something like that. So it's just, want to, pray for the best, when it comes to those situations and, try your best to be loving to everyone. So I think that's like one big part of like being spiritually healthy is like you said, coming from a pure heart, like waking up with that pure heart and knowing that you understand that there may be bad things that may happen throughout your day, but like just trying your best to keep the most positive attitude towards that
Correct.
situation. And also when it comes into like other people that may not be like us, because like you mentioned,
Right.
I grew up Southern Baptist as well, so just trying our best to not be super like unloving, because I feel like with Christianity nowadays we almost get a bad rep for being unloving towards people. And
Right.
I think it's just super important to really keep that that love in the situation, because of course, like as we know in the Bible, it talks about so much about love and how we need
Right.
to love others, and like the greatest commandment is love, not commandment, the greatest out of faith, hope, and love is love. I think
Right.
in loving
Right.
your neighbor, there's like so many things that go back to love. So I think that's definitely a really good one for sure, is being loving towards people and having a pure heart.
Correct. 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 I think that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. I, I was gonna add into that when you was talking about love. Some years ago, I was traveling and I came back. I went to Hawaii for like 10 days with some family. And on the way back, I was sitting beside a guy. And when you wait for takeoff, you're observing yourself. Well, I observe my surroundings and I'm like, okay, who I'm sitting beside and all of that. And I mean, the stewardess, all of them, like they were just catering to him. And I was like, what? What's going on? So eventually, over the flight, it was an 8-hour flight from Honolulu to Atlanta. And he started talking to me, and I learned that he was a aviation uh police, like marshal type person. He like basically sits on planes and monitors the flights, and sometimes he sits out with us, the passengers, and sometimes he actually sits up in the cockpit with the pilot. So as he's going, we get to talking deep, and he asked me, what do I pray for? And I thought about it, and I was like, well, I went to rattling off the things that I say that I pray for. And he was like, that's not bad, but parting ways with you, I'm going to tell you, I will ask you to pray for wisdom, knowledge, and discernment. And that discernment one was the real one. You feel me? You understand? Because like I feel like that's good spiritual health too. Like the gift of discernment. Not everybody has it. um, I feel like along my spiritual journey, I have gotten way better at it, because I used to be a person who was set. I'm still set in some of my ways, but when it comes to spirituality, religiousness, and all that, I feel like my mind is way open, because for one, I love to hear about other people's experiences. For one, that's for one, and two, it's just we grew up with this Southern Baptist thinking, and you got to realize that not everyone does that. So you're gonna come in contact with so many different, like I said, spiritual journeys, religious, like, and that is to me, religious and religiousness and spirituality is way totally different. Um, on a scale, so it's a whole lot you can unravel with that one question.
Yeah, you are right. There is a big difference between being religious and being spiritual. I definitely, most people think that that it's the same thing, and like they're similar, but they're just not exactly the same thing. And you mentioned about discernment, and I'm glad that you did, because that is a very important thing when it comes to our spiritual journey, is like discerning, like even like people in our lives that we surround ourselves with, and like realizing who's like wanting to be my friend or even family members. Sometimes it
Yeah,
can be hard to trust
right,
family, like trying to figure out who are the right kind of people to surround yourself with.
right, and I feel like in my journey with my discernment, I feel like I've come to a point where I recognize that everyone and everybody else is not going to feel the same way that I do, speak about it the same way I do. And I feel like I prayed for the discernment and it's coming to me because that's the first thing I'm starting to think now. Like, uh, I feel this way, but hey, the next person doesn't, and just because they don't, you can't condemn them or just toss up. It's nothing wrong with having your own opinion, but your opinions are not facts, and that's just coming to learning with discernment. That's part of it. You can like at the end of the day, you're going to be judged alone. You're not going to be judged as a whole. It's going to be just you. So that it's coming. It's becoming. It's becoming.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There is it's a process. It like takes a little bit to get used to, like trying to discern, I guess, like in the best way possible. I know like at first when people, try to, I guess, get into like discerning and like realizing that like we're all not exactly the same kind of
Right.
people, and also, just knowing, trying to understand people's like intentions of like being around you, whether they're trying to be around you for like, a good reason, whether they like really enjoy being around you, or if they're like trying to be around you for to, I don't know, like to backstab you at the end of it all. Like, just like there's so
Right.
many different ways to discern people, and like, try to read off their, I guess, their energy. I don't know what you want to call it, their vibe, like if they're giving off good vibes. So I definitely think, yeah, discernment is one that, can be a challenge, and but also is one of like the biggest things as far as our spiritual journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think like, I guess like for me, I guess talking from like a personal experience being Southern Baptist, I think like when it comes to a spiritual journey, I think like, for me, I guess like reading the Bible and like what exactly like is in the Bible, because there's a lot of things in the Bible that
All
don't
right.
make sense, if I'm gonna be honest. There's like a lot of things in the Old Testament that like, it doesn't, like a lot of it is like old covenant stuff like before Jesus was here the first time. So like it can be kind of hard to understand like some of the sacrifices, like the animal sacrifices and stuff like that. And or even like just the history itself can be a little bit hard. I feel like even when I was younger in like middle school and high school, I felt like history was like one of those that like I just could not stand to like learn. I just think it's boring. But
Well,
you know
I didn't think like I some things intrigue me. Um, some things intrigue me, and I was just having a conversation with my mom the other day, and I was saying how I learned. I mean, I don't know if it was just me, but I recall in history classes being taught about when it came to religion, there were so many different types of religion. And I was like, people, I don't know, like, are they not teaching this anymore or what is it? Because it's like a big, I ain't gonna say it's a big gap, but it's like a big knowledge space in it. And I feel like that served as like a basis, a ground for uh yourself because that's like your first introduction to more than likely you would from a child you got up, we're going to church on Sunday morning, we're going to Bible study on Wednesday, and maybe the occasional choir practice on Saturday type stuff, but it's different religions and they do totally different things. And I feel like you were taught a certain thing growing up, and then you get in school with that, and it introduces you to a possibility of other things. And I also think that low key starts your spirituality and how move forward in life with your spirituality. So you don't think about it then, but when you get older, you're like, oh man, I remember. Well, that's me. I'd be like, hey, I remember going over this before, and wow, and you can actually understand it, or you see it, or someone who practices it, and it's not the same as you. So that's just that it set a basis and a tone. So yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point that you make. That like in the education system, I feel like, yeah, there isn't really as much like introduction into like maybe other religions, per se. Like I know like when I was younger, I remember like hearing about some like people like Gandhi and like you hear
Right.
about Buddha and like I mean I even knew about like Jesus of course like growing up back Southern Baptist so like but you don't hear about like some of the other ones and not that you know trying to learn about these religions will like convert you away from like what you've been like as a Southern Baptist but like just I guess understanding their perspective and like how they worship I guess you know it's it could be you know interesting you know trying to figure out
Right.
how they go about their lives and you know like you said it's kind of like when you learn that in the middle school or high school range I think it's important to you know that's kind of like the starting point of where we become who we are like as adults and especially when you go through puberty you know that's like part of just like the growing up process so like you know
Right.
like trying to
Right.
figure out who you are as a you know as a
As a,
person yeah I think that's just super important so so yeah I think yeah just you know for me like yeah just trying to understand like biblical history and then also like you know I think it's good to understand other people's religions as well you know even if you don't want
right.
to pursue their religion but still you know just understand kind of like their viewpoint of things because like you said not everybody's the same.
Right. Right. Oh, so
Yeah, so I think those are some good like things that you know that can come with being spiritually healthy. But I guess my next question that comes to mind is have you ever had moments where you felt like you were lacking on your spiritual walk?
oh man, yeah. Like the older I get, I feel like I'm more spiritual than I am religious. Um, like I feel like that aligns more with my beliefs and how I feel on the inside. But like at the same time, I tell people quick, fast, and in a hurry that it doesn't take away from the fact that I believe in God and I know that He's a healer and I know that He's with me, within me. But I feel like when it comes to the religion, it's so many of them that like I can appreciate something from each and every one that I come across. Um, that's I'll tell you from being a Southern Baptist, um, my father grew up Baptist, and when he passed, he had transitioned into um Islam. So he, was Muslim, and one of my uncles still practice that to the day, and that was one of my first experiences with a different religion. Um, when I was a teenager was actually going to mosque and participating in their weekly religious activities. And that changed. I ain't gonna say it changed my perspective on things, but that also put other things into perspective. So that's why I say I feel like I'm more spirit. I feel like I'm leaning more towards spirituality type things instead of religious things. Because I also feel like the world has lost religion in certain places. So that goes to say that you have to protect oneself as well. I ain't gonna say you can't save the world because you can always be a vessel. You can always put out your beliefs if that's what you do. um, it's on the right. Everybody don't have to listen, but be you, do you. If that's what you were called to do, do it. Um, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that you bring up some really good points. So, like, with when it comes to like other religions, that like even if you don't personally believe in maybe like the God that they worship, but like there may be something within that religion that you appreciate or that you realize like, okay, like you know, that's something you know really good that I could even apply to my life because it may be even something similar to like Christians believe in. So, like you know, or like the basis of like you know what Christians should do as like Christ followers and like spreading the gospel. And there may be things that like you know Islam, you know Muslims do that like you may see that like okay, like you know I think that's cool. But like, even though I don't worship the same God that they worship, but like I think that it's pretty cool that like, what they do, it, like you said, puts a whole new perspective on things for sure.
I, like I said, yeah, I feel like I lack um at times, but no one can speak for me and my journey and what I'm doing. I also know that I always pray to keep a pure heart and to so that I can treat people the way that I want to be treated. Um, I've lived by do unto others as others do unto you. For years and years and years. I that was one of the first principles that I remember learning in church. On around people that were church goers that treat people basically that's saying treat people how you want to be treated, whether they treat you like that or not. I feel like, and that can be any religion. That ain't just got to be Christianity. That doesn't just have to be like that. That's I've learned that in almost each more anything that I've come across that it's been like that. But I feel like I could do better on my spiritual journey. Sometimes I feel like I am doing better and I get knocked back, but it's all a learning experience. The knowledge that that I said when they meant going back to the guy that told me to pray for knowledge, wisdom, and discernment. It all comes together. It all comes together.
Absolutely. I love that, that he even brought that advice to you because those are some really good things to pray for. And at the end of the day, yeah, it all comes back to that, just the wisdom and knowledge and, discernment. I think those are some really good ones for sure. And for me, I do feel like, I definitely lack, I think at the end of the day, we all realize that we're not perfect and that there's always going to be something to learn, when it comes to our journey in life. And, there may be things where we have to realize, okay, like maybe I should change this about myself or,
Right.
change like how I act towards others because, I may say that I'm a Christian, but like maybe how I treat others may not be the right way,
Right.
So I think, that's really important to apply to our lives is just, realize that like almost like have a self-reflection moment and like realize that we're not perfect. So like I could definitely say that I've had moments where I like even, a few minutes ago I mentioned about like for me personally, I feel like, reading the Bible and like knowing what it means, like what some of the verses mean is important to me. But there are days where I feel like if I see like a chapter in the Bible that has like a bunch of verses, it almost seems like too overwhelming for me to read.
Right.
Excuse me, overwhelming for me to read. And I think that then it kind of hinders me from like even wanting to read it because I know like, oh my gosh, like this has like, 80 verses and it's like at the same time, I may put the same energy and spend longer time doing something else, like let's just say like going bowling when
Right.
so it's like I guess, I just have to have a better mindset when it comes to, my priorities, I guess, when it comes to my spiritual journey.
Right. Right.
So, so yeah, I think, there are definitely things I could definitely improve on for sure.
Correct.
So, I guess the next question I have is very similar to the question I've already asked, but do you feel like it can sometimes be difficult to remain on the right path during our spiritual journey in life?
Oh, most definitely. Obstacles are gonna pop up and it's gonna question your faith. Sometimes you might run into something that question everything you feel like you ever learned, you ever knew. But I just feel like all of that is put there to give you the knowledge, back to saying, giving you that knowledge, that wisdom, that gift of discernment to how you should be with others and like human beings and anybody. And if you experience other type of things too, it also gives you like they basically, like you said, it all boils down to you. There are so many other religions that aren't what you are accustomed to. But if you actually look into it and actually experience it, it's a lot of things that they do that you do the same thing, and that once again that gift of discernment gives you the gift to say that, hey, just because they don't learn it the way I do, they don't speak it the way I do, they don't feel it the way I do, it you can't just disregard their feeling for it, how they see it. It's just it's the eye opener. Learning, praying for the discernment, and then God granting you discernment or some of it. Because sometimes you feel like you made it this far in this part of the journey, and boom, something happened. And you're like, my back to this, but you're gonna continue to repeat something until God feels like, okay, you've had enough. They've learned. Um, with that too. So you know, and sometimes we're foolish. We're often foolish. Uh, let's talk. We could, you know what I'm saying? We're not gonna just sugarcoat any of it because I feel like part of that spiritual journey is learning yourself, and sometimes learning yourself is one of the hardest things because you could. That's when you learn that it's nothing holding you back besides you. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's how I feel that one.
Yeah, you actually make a very good point there at the end where you said that it's almost like you're basically saying that like we can be our worst enemies, like we can be our own worst enemies in life, and sometimes we're holding ourselves back from like pursuing a more, I guess, in-depth spiritual journey, and like you said, we could be very foolish for sure.
Yeah,
So I think, that's how, really good to think of. And, I could definitely say for sure that it is difficult to remain on the, right path because even
right,
when it comes to like temptation, if I throw that into the formula of our spiritual journey, I feel like, you may externally see something that may look like, oh, like this looks like a good time, I'm going to go do
yeah,
this. And then you end up, regretting that. And I think that comes with a lot of, the learning experiences that we've talked about that like, we
right,
may be foolish and, decide we're going to go do this that may not help us on our spiritual journey. And
right.
then we
Goodness,
wake up, yeah, with
yeah.
regret.
But once again, like I'm also say that just if you do get pushed back, just keep going forward. That's what I feel like you got to keep that mindset with it. Okay, yeah, I might have faltered a little bit, but guess what? I'm still going pushing forward on the road. I'm still pushing forward. I didn't make a pit stop. I'm not on the side of the road waiting on somebody to save me. I'm keep pushing forward, and I that's a big part of it too. That's a big part of it, especially with the spiritual health journey. It's like I said, how you're responding to the things that are being brought up to you. Because if you let's go back to the Southern Baptist, we say for instance Bible study, they were mostly centered around lessons that were in the Bible. And I mean, let's talk about all of the people that went through something that we learned, but there was a lesson in each. It was something to learn in each one of those stories that we were told as kids, and that we can go once again refer to the Bible and read it as many times as you want to, but it's always a lesson learned in what was going on. And that was it, at the time you're like, nah, 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 nah. But when you get older, you're like, it clicks, and you're just like, oh, that's what that was for. And it just because we learned it that way, I feel like other people, depending upon their spiritual journey, um, it like I said, it gets to a point where to me I feel like it's more spiritual than religious. So um, but once again, to me, that goes into what you believe too. So,
hmm Yeah, I actually, agree with you in that point that, I feel like when people are religious, it almost seems like, they're just stuck in like certain rules, almost kind of like, I guess like if we're going back to our beliefs of like, Jesus coming here the first time and, thinking about like the Pharisees at the time that would like, oh, he's doing this on the Sabbath and, there
right,
are like different things like, but like Jesus isn't like worried about religion. He's more worried about their relationship. And
yeah,
I think that's where I'm like pursuing in that direction instead of pursuing religion and like laws. There are certain things, of course, in religion that are really good to have in your life, but like there are some things where like people are so nitpicky over like little things that it's like, okay, like, but are you more worried about the law, or like, laws that, maybe aren't as, I don't want to say relevant, but I mean, I guess in a way relevant, or are you more worried about, your relationship with the Lord? Like it almost like you're more worried about condemning
That wrong,
others.
the like with the Christianity, I don't want to say that Christianity is one of the most hypocritical religions that I've come across, but in reality, it is becoming one of the more hypocritical religion, like faith that I've come across, because the people that you know claim to be divine and devout, they're claiming this and they're claiming that. True colors always show when something, situation is brought about. Um, I I'm gonna give you an example what kind of made me, I ain't gonna say it made me mad, but I was just shaking my head. Um, I don't know if you paid attention to the DeVar Hamlin situation. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of pushback over a jacket he wore to the Super Bowl or whatever, and I just saw so many people who claim to be Christian, like freaking saying stuff like they want to take their prayers back, and I'm just like, what? That ain't what Christianity is about. Like that ain't what any religious faith is about. Like why? And some people let their, once again, their own personal beliefs get in the way of what they, I ain't gonna say what they should be, but they don't realize that just because they feel that way don't mean everybody else feels that way. And once you get to a point where, okay, what, and then when you get to a point where what they feel or think doesn't matter, it's not gonna hinder your spiritual journey. Like once again, at the end of the day, when it's your judgment day, I don't think it's gonna be what DeVar Hamlin did here. God's gonna be like, I saw you pray for this person. I'm just saying, and you didn't have to. You didn't know them from a can of paint, but your heart was pure enough to say you a prayer, and it was heartfelt. You meant it. And how can in one sentence you saying that and you praying for them, and in the next minute you're ridiculing, casting stones? That's just crazy, and that ain't how it's supposed to go. And it just, like, once again, that's when people are way more religious than they are spiritual, because it's like they're so religious to the point where they don't even see the wrong in what they're doing, and it ain't, that this ain't how this supposed to go. And that's just an example, but
Yeah.
I just think it's a good example, and it don't look good to the people who, like, say, people like us that grew up in these type of churches and stuff like that. It makes everybody look bad as a whole. Like people are like, oh, Christians this, and what if I call myself a devout Christian, and somebody's casting judgment upon me because of what somebody else said or did and how they felt, when that ain't how I feel and it ain't what I did. It's a whole lot that could be unraveled. It's not what.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought this up, and I think this is a very good example that you brought up because, like, of course, like when that situation happened where he was like rushed to the hospital, of course everybody was, praying that, like, Lord, that hopefully there was a miracle out of this because, like he's just so young and he has such a long career ahead of him. And then, like you said, once he got better, he did wear the jacket, which, could be definitely was a controversy for sure. And I think it's just like the way we react to a situation like that. I mean, yeah, you can react to it the way that you should, like when it comes to maybe disappointment or like
Right.
anger about it, but not like taking prayers back, like I shouldn't have prayed for
Oh,
his healing. And that's ridiculous.
they're so cruel on the internet. I often find myself down rabbit holes because I like to see how others think, like what's thought process for some people, and like I have my opinion. My opinion was, for one, you're upset, but you don't even know if that's the religion he follows. Like maybe that depiction means nothing to him at all. So you know, like we can't just assume. You're assuming at this point. And I actually went to his page to see that he mentioned God or Jesus or anybody at any point in time. And I scrolled back like within a year, and I didn't see him mention God or none of that one time. I seen him say he was thankful to be able to, he couldn't be here. He's grateful and all of that. But that don't mean that he follows your religion. And if you're who you say you are, then you said that prayer and you meant it from the heart. Like that's what I meant when I was saying I pray for a pure heart, like to be able to when I say it, I mean it. I'm not saying it from a place of malice, a place of envy, a place of jealousy, or nothing like that. I'm really saying it and I'm meaning it. It ain't just boom, boom, boom that I'm saying, yeah, I'm praying to God that this guy pulls from this and he's able to play football again. And I'm just like, wow, that is and it's disappointing. Goes back to saying it disappoints you more than anything because you're just like, what? This how you feel?
Yeah, it truly is disappointing when like there are those few Christians that, don't act Christian that go out there and say something and like you said, it makes the rest of us look bad that may have been like had the right intentions when it came to praying for him and his healing. But it's unfortunate because like you said, when it comes to, the hypocrisy within Christianity, it is unfortunately true just, being in the Christianity world and growing up with that belief, as a whole I feel like there's like much more improvement that we need to do, like not only pray for those that are within the Christian community but also pray for those that are outside of the Christian community. And I know you want to see the best. I mean, you would want to see the best in everybody, you would think, and you wouldn't want to bring bad stuff, or karma, whatever you want to call it, upon
Right,
somebody that doesn't believe the way you do.
right, right.
So, yeah, I think it could definitely be difficult. And, I was just even thinking about, like, I guess as far as like personally for me, like at the beginning of 2020, like this was like a couple of months before COVID happened. I always told myself that I wanted to be healthier in six different areas of my life, and spiritual health was definitely one of them. But like there was also like like physical health and like verbal health, like the way I speak to people, and like financial health, and there was a couple more. Let's see, emotional health, like mental health. Those were like the main ones that I
And
wanted to
they
pursue.
all align. So I mean, they go one and one with each other. I will say that. To me, in my eyes, they all align with each other because when it comes to mental and physical, um, they're closely aligned too. And if you don't have those in the right place, then your mind's clouded, maybe, and not seeing what you could probably see if you had more of a positive, or I would say, um, your health, it was in a good place, as in it's not poor. You don't have poor mental health. You don't have poor physical health. You don't have poor financial health. But once again, it all aligns. When you start doing better than all of them, then I feel like all of them will soar, um, and bring out who you know what I'm saying? The person you're working so hard to be. Well, I ain't gonna say to be, but your journey, like it's making your journey, the steps on your journey easier than
Mhm.
before. So
Yes, exactly. I love that you mentioned that because it is true that like all of those do go back to like the biggest, the big goal of your like spiritual journey in life, which is like to grow and to, that makes you, I guess, like a better person as per se when it comes to like, all of these six different areas. And the reason why I mentioned this is because, of course, when COVID hit, a lot of like major things happened like there in 2020 that like brought a lot of craziness, like a lot of division, and it affected all six of these areas for everybody, like as a whole. Like when it came to like financial health,
right,
people were out of jobs, and when it came to mental health, people were stuck in their homes, and people were just
right,
like going crazy. Divorce was like at an all-time high because people are like, oh my gosh, this person's driving me crazy. And I,
and
I think even like with verbal health, that became very crazy because there became debates about different situations like is COVID real? Is COVID not real? Then, like, once people
Right.
realize it's real, like, do I get the vaccine? Do I not get the vaccine? And even the situation that happened with like George Floyd, I feel like people like had a different reaction one side or another, and it became like
Right.
a big crazy situation out of that to where it caused a lot of division. And also on top of that situation, like the who's going to be our next president situation. And
Yeah.
it was just 2020 was like it was a test for a challenge for all of those six areas.
Yeah, 2020 was like putting us in a twilight zone. Like, what? And I feel
Mhm.
like, although we're feeling effects from it, I think that we're slowly coming out of it as a society. But things are so different. Like post COVID, it's just it's a lot to intake at times. So yeah,
Hmm. And yeah,
it
2020
like kind
was
of
rough.
no, like to me in a way that goes into spirituality too. When I go with my with my spiritual health, I've started like reading into my birth chart and stuff like that. I haven't delved into it the way I want to, but that's like on my list of things to do. More to and I feel like doing so helps me realize who I am a little more too. Um, a lot of people don't believe in those type of things, but I do. Once again, like I said, that I'm not just gonna box myself in with what I learned as a child. I just let it serve as a basis going forward of what the things that, because I feel like although I may not agree with a lot of things, there are some things that you could use in life, always use in life. Some of the lessons that's taught, and like like we said earlier, it could be taught a different way, but it's pretty much the same thing and other things. So I don't I feel like each and you be in control of it. Don't do what your mom wants you to do, your dad wants you to do, your family. You make the decision to what way you're gonna embark on your spiritual journey. If you feel like it's gonna make you're gonna come out more religious than you were, then that's fine too. But like I said, I feel like mine's heading more towards the more of a spiritual journey instead of a religious journey, in which a lot of people do. I don't think they realize that's what they're doing it, but that's what it's going to.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that you did say that. I like people put themselves in a box, and even like when it comes to that box, you use that kind of like as the foundation of like things that you learned from when you were younger, and kind of grow upon that and like get yourself out of that box and like not following the same exact journey that maybe your other family members or loved ones went through, because
Right.
at the end of the day, like you said, when it comes to Judgment Day, we're going to stand alone. And,
Correct.
you got to just realize that, like, it's an individual journey that, like, of course, when it comes to, like, my parents, of course, they're, Christian, and, of course, I'm Christian too. But, like, there's definitely going to be different journeys that I go through that, like, my parents didn't go through, or vice versa. They may have gone through
Right.
situations that, like, I never will go through. So I think just,
Right.
understanding that it's an individual experience, and like just having that importance of wanting to grow in that area is very important for sure.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I guess leading into my last question, what are some good things that you've seen when it comes to like your spiritual journey? Like, are there some things within yourself as you've gotten older that you feel like has been a positive, like made a positive impact on your life?
Um, Getting older, I'm gonna run it back to the discernment again. That has been something that I've been like over the last 5 years or more. That the older I get, I feel like I've that gets better in time. Um, I feel like um my journey is helped me out mentally some too about the way I respond to certain things. Learning your triggers, knowing things like even where it goes, it just gets to the point where you're so aware. your awareness is like, you know, at a different level, and things that used to excite you just don't hit the same way. You know, it's just not different. That's not the direction you're going in anymore. But you ain't saying you're not like with me. I'm not casting judgment upon it. I'm just saying that ain't for me anymore. That's not in alignment with what I'm at and where I'm going, you know? And all of it it's all an experience to me. Like anything that you go through is a learning experience. People often look at failure as failure, but I don't look at it as failure anymore. I look at it as I learned something from it. I know if I fail this time, I know what to do next time. And like I said again, you might go through the same cycle multiple times. And God's like, well, my child, you've learned, right? You understand what I'm trying to tell you, because he gonna put it right there every time. Now, if you're looking for the answer, I'm gonna tell you it's there somewhere. And you might didn't see it, or you weren't paying attention, or maybe you didn't want to pay attention to it. But when it hits you. There it's gonna always be there. It no matter where I go on my spiritual journey, I feel like my God won't leave me nor forsake me. So, um, anytime I pray to Him. I'm learning to try to thank my ancestors too. I feel like that's part of spiritual journey, knowing where you come from. Is a I feel like is a big part of it too, because you never know, like your family like goes back years and years, and yeah, y'all might have practiced this for so long, but maybe it was meant for you to be the person to change it, or the person to see it different and to do different things. So each person's gonna be different. um and I'm happy at where I'm at in mine. um I might repeat. I repeat some of the same lessons over and over, and I tell myself, I'm like, you know why you're repeating these lessons, right? Saying like that's another part, but the awareness is unreal. The awareness is unreal, and when you can start like telling you correcting yourself, and you just like this not what it is. You got to do something different. You got to do a different route. You know what you need to do. um I feel like that's when you get into a point where your spiritual health is there. It ain't as poor as it used to be, because you know the experiences add up. All of that is part of you. It's you know it's your history. So I feel confident in my spiritual journey.
Yes, you brought up some really, really good points that I want to go over. So like you talked about how, some people do look at failure as failure, but like you don't look at it in that way. You look at it more as in a learning experience. There's something that you can come out of it learning. And that the reality is that, like you said, we fall into that same exact situation over and over again sometimes. And I could definitely say that I'm guilty in those areas where I'll say, I want to try to learn and do better out of this. And then like you still fall into it. And then it's like, and then eventually, like I said, it's going to be that aha moment, like, oh, like, well, maybe like this is, like, maybe you'll have that moment of, I guess, a conviction about that situation. So, I think, it's just super important to realize that. And another thing that you brought up was about awareness. I think that's like the very good, like, starting point is being aware of like the situation at hand that maybe you're going through, any kind of, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that you're going through. It's just like really having, that awareness and also
Yeah.
discernment, like you mentioned.
Yes, the once like with the awareness, the accountability too. I want to throw that in there, because when you're aware, that means you're aware of what's going on, your actions, and you know what actions you need to take to change this. And that's where the accountability comes in, because sometimes people often look to blame others for their mishaps and their bumps in the road. And I'm not that person anymore. Whether it is somebody, at least whether somebody was a catalyst in something that happened, it is what it is. I'm not blaming anybody else for the things that I go through anymore. I just, say it's a part of my journey and keep it on going, instead of stopping on the side of the road or breaking down and doing this Even if I'm breaking down, I'm gonna keep on pushing through the breakdown because I know there's light at the end of the tunnel. Uh, he didn't bring me this far to just say go, let me go. So I'm putting it like that, you know.
Yes, amen to that. I love that because I think it's super important to hold ourselves accountable whenever a moment like that happens and, make sure that we are trying to grow and do better in that area. And I think as we get older, like we become more mature with our decisions, but at the same time, we know that there are moments where we do still fall into those,
uh,
situations all the time for me. I still fell on a daily. We all can say that we fall short and that there's something with each day that we can learn, something out of that we can do better in. And, I know you mentioned something about like, people like to point fingers at other people's for like a situation that may be affecting them. And I think that that is very true because I could say I've done that before where, I may be saying, well, if this person didn't do this, I wouldn't be thinking that way. But it's like really at the end of the day, it comes back to the accountability of realizing that like, no, like I need to realize this is on me. I'm grown enough now, like I'm old enough to know
right.
better. So,
What I have done different, like what you know what I'm saying? Well, what is blaming other people gonna get me? It's gonna get me nowhere. Besides, and it's going nowhere fast, running in the same spot. Um, Once you start being accountable for your actions, um, things get better. I mean, it is what it is, and like I said, you're gonna have the bump. You might have the hurdle to jump, or however it goes, but it's the way you react. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, you can blame the whole world, but what is it gonna change? Is it gonna make a difference? No. You're still gonna be there in that same spot until you get up and do something about it. So it is
yeah.
what
Yeah, that's really good. I think, how you react to a situation is super, big in our walk, spiritual walk because like I guess one example I could think of is like if somebody does you wrong, like and you kind of become bitter towards that person, like you're almost thinking in a way that you being bitter towards that person is going to like affect them that, they're gonna learn, oh, I'm gonna
God
teach them a lesson.
affecting you.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
You. Because at the end of the day, what they doing has no effect on what your outcome is. I mean, it even if it was to that point where something they did may affect your outcome, you know, once again that hey, that's a seasonal people. And then you got the people that's always there. Sometimes God put people that'll teach you certain things or whoever you may believe in. I'm not gonna say everyone believes in God, but uh I'm pretty sure everybody can say that they've got lessons in life that they've learned or needed to learn, and they know that a symbol or sign was put there to help them learn it some type of way, whether it was a person, a situation, or any of that. So
Yeah, that's a very good point. That like people do automatically assume that like, oh, if this will make me feel better to make this first person feel like crap for what they did to me. But at the end of the day, like we said, it's going to affect us more at the end of the day. It's like putting
hey,
poison within ourselves. And, we
right.
just have to realize that,
Pure heart goes back to that pure heart. Do things with pure intentions. Um, when I'm a firm believer, if you do things without them, that the universe gonna bring it back around. I don't know how and I don't know when, but the universe will bring that back. You put that bad karma out there. Karma. I'm one of them people. I believe in that. I don't care to do bad things to people, even though I have reacted in certain situations and how I reacted may have been warranted. But I still reflect on it and ask for forgiveness for the way that I felt and the way that I asked and to remove any ill feelings from my body because I don't need any of that hindering my journey and my progress and my success. I don't need none of that in my life. So yeah, it's best to make peace with it and move along.
Yeah, and I've definitely learned that as I've gotten older to like, it's better to just let things go. And even if that person never apologizes for what they did to you, just letting that go and forgiving and moving forward, I think is just so important because you don't have that anger up in you and that hatred feeling, and because it would send you down a downward spiral pretty
Right,
quick.
right.
So I could even say that in like a situation that I went through in my life, like when I was maybe like 18 years old, I went through a situation where somebody did me wrong, and for like probably a few months, I had this like bitterness towards this person. I like treated this person horribly, and and it ended up, it almost had someone had to just tell me straight up that like, what you're doing isn't right. So, I just had to.
Your key words right there. You said you were 18. So at 18, your emotional health or your emotional emotions weren't as mature as they are now. Now you see the error in your ways, and that comes like with me right now. If I'm presented with those type of situations, I try to look at it from everybody's point of view. Yes, I got my own opinion on it, and I'm gonna speak what I gotta speak. But at the end of the day, if when it's over, I'm gonna reflect on my responses on how I acted, and if I feel like I could have reacted in a different way, once again, I'm putting it in the universe that it's let go. It is what it is. It's not hindering me from anything. If I feel like I did somebody wrong, I get and pray and say, Lord, if I've done some wrongs that people felt that I have done to them, please forgive me, because I really didn't mean it that way. I just was reacting over how someone was. It's a every for every action there's an opposite equal reaction. Um, and sometimes you have to reflect on that, and that's a part of being accountable for certain things. Like, what was your role in the situation? So, even if you were right, it don't matter. It is what it is. Because some people, they might not feel like you was right, but don't dwell on it. Move along. Long as you keep your appearance together, then move along. Yeah, that's you're right though. You're right, because the way you responded at 18 is not going to be the way you're responding right now today. Uh, I'm pretty sure you took that situation and thought about it and was like, well, yeah, you're right. I am acting wrong about it, and I'm and it does not mean that you got to go back to being buddy buddy and best friends with a person. It just means that there's no ill will. I wish you the best in life, No, seriously, and I mean it. It ain't there's no ill will from me. I wish you the best. It is what it is. It's not affecting me anymore. So I let that go and gave it to God. So,
Hmm.
know,
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a very good like final thought when it comes to this topic because like realizing that like how we may react 10 years ago is definitely going to be a lot different now, and just realizing that as we become more mature spiritually in life, like we become more forgiving towards people, and like we want to have that peacefulness with people, and also like a lot of the things that you mentioned, like we want to grow in our discernment and wisdom and knowledge, as well as like even taking accountability for things that we may have done wrong or things that we continue to fall into. So I think those are some really good things that like comes out of being more, I guess, spiritually healthy in life. And I think that, I hope that maybe people got something out of this and realized that like, when it comes to bitterness, I feel like that's like the hardest one for people to get over. I think, just realizing just to give it up and give it to God, or
right,
just give it up and just move forward at the end of the day.
right. And in no way, shape, or form am I saying you're not allowed to feel that way. You're not this and that, because, like, once again, different people feel different ways about different things. Um, and your feelings are valid at all times. But sometimes you really have to check into it. Why am I feeling this way? Is it really that serious, or was it called for? And that's what I look for now in certain situations. And I make peace with the situation, and sometimes it may come back. And you thought you were over it, or you thought you moved past it and something triggers you and boom, you feel like you're back. But then you realize that you made it past the situation, you're alive and well. And once again, boom, bye, holla at it. It is what it is. Give it to God. Well, just remember what it taught you and keep it moving.
Yes, absolutely. I think you mentioned about our feelings and how it's valid, and I think that's really important to point out because some people may think, oh well, I'm not allowed to be hurt about a situation. It's like, yeah, you're
You're
absolutely,
such
allowed. So yeah, you're absolutely allowed to feel that way, but it's like how you react in that situation towards that person that did you wrong as the big thing as far as our spiritual journey and how we can grow and be the bigger person out of that situation. So, anyways, I think that is going to end our topic on spiritual health. I thank you for being here again. I know you've had a pretty busy day, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this.
no problem, no problem. Thank you for having me. I got some big things coming up, so I'll message you about them when it gets closer. And if you need a topic, we can talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. I love having you on here and I love getting to talk to you and catch up with you because I think this is
Right?
definitely really good conversations that we've had so far.
Yes, yes. So I wish everyone well on their own spiritual journeys. I'm gonna end it by saying that.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I think, wishing for the best for everybody and, their spiritual walk, I think it's definitely a very good way to end this topic. So, viewers, I hope that you've enjoyed this, whether you've watched this on YouTube or listened to this on any of the podcast streaming platforms. I appreciate your support either way. So, anyways, everybody, I hope that y'all have a good rest of your day or night, depending on when you're watching or listening to this. And I will see y'all on the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. Talk to y'all later. Thank you, everybody, that took the time to listen to this episode of Not Your Average Joel. My podcast is available not only on YouTube, but also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from. I also have an Instagram page where you can see outstanding moments, behind the scenes, and even a funny moment or two from each episode at Not Your Average Joel Podcast. If you want to get in contact with me, then my Instagram page is probably the best way to do so through direct messaging. I appreciate any kind of support that you have given to this channel, whether you are a guest or a listener to this podcast. Once again, I thank y'all so much, and I look forward to sharing more of my life with y'all on the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. Goodbye.